Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I am Marcello Requires. I am a representative of the Papa Giovanni XXIII Comunità working in Albania. I would like to greet you on behalf of Enrico Caviti, who is the responsible and director of our association. We are very pleased for the opportunity that we have been given. We would like to bring you also the greetings and relay the greetings of the personalities that are here today. First of all, the Speaker of Parliament, the Italian Ambassador, the Minister of Foreign Affairs as well, the representatives of the diplomatic corps here in Albania, and especially not just the Italian embassy, but also the entire European Union that provides us with the opportunity to work in this framework. So I'd like to give the floor without further ado to the Italian ambassador to Albania for his opening remarks. Dear representatives of institutions, dear colleagues, dear volunteers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here with you today in this very important event. I will join Dr. Requires in welcoming here today, and I'm happy to hear what has happened during the last 3 years of work of the Colomba operation, which will shed light on the vendetta and the blood-feud communities. It's a dramatic reality, and all of us who work here in Albania and live here in Albania have heard of it, but personally we do not, I can say that sometimes we do not give it the adequate attention. And it was very interesting for me to meet the Operazione Colomba volunteers, and they told me about their work, and I'm very happy to hear today what they will say, because for all of us it will be a great source of information. I would very shortly stop on a few aspects that impressed me in this report. First of all, historically, we all know that the blood feud and vendetta phenomenon are related to the canon, with an archaic, let's say, codex of laws. Actually, the phenomenon is quite modern, actually, and is no longer related with what has been written in the Dekdugajini canon. And it depends on the deficiencies of the judiciary and the gaps that have been created by the Albanian institutions. And in the canon, actually, vendetta and blood feud was an equal opportunity for everybody, and regardless of persons being poor, powerful, rich or not, no one could escape the canon, while today it is perceived as injustice, as perceived as corruption, and it is corruption that does not allow justice and leads people and civilians to be involved in blood feuds. And this leads us as a segue to the relevance of the justice reform that has been undertaken in Albania by the government and the parliament, and which should be implemented as soon as possible. This reality and this progress is necessary because of course, Albania is looking forward to being a member of the EU, but also for the well-being of Albanian citizens as well. And I'm very happy to note that in the last few weeks, this reform is on a right path, with the first decisions made in the framework of the so-called judges vetting. But in general, I believe that this also includes the responsibility of all institutions, not only those laws related directly to justice, because we should understand together what are the deep rooted cultural and economic phenomenon of this phenomenon, and that's where we start our fight. I believe that today's event will allow us to understand more and will provide more information to all to promote efficient initiatives in this sense. Special thanks to Ms. Irina Belanța, Ombudsman of Albania, for her participation and for supporting and cooperating with us. Before I close, please allow me to remark the special role of civil society organization in this regard. We talked about institutions, but I believe that the civil society should be the front line as a counterweight of the politics and institutions, and this should be true everywhere. But I believe that in Albania it's even far more interesting in a new democratic country, so there is a need for civil society to be engaged daily. And please allow me to close with a proud sense that the Italian civil society is supporting the Albanian civil society and population. In Albania, there are now almost 20 Italian NGOs operating in many important sectors, in education, in health, in agricultural development, in inclusion, in the promotion of marginalized groups, or for the development of remote areas in Albania, and they work hand in hand with the Albanian civil society and in cooperation with Albanian institutions and authorities. Among these activities of these organizations is also the Papa Giovanni XXIII Association, who are also responsible for the Colomba activities. And I'm personally interested, and I've noted that they work very passionately, and I am here also to help them for their efforts and to wish everyone that works in this field to have success with their work. Thank you. Dear speaker, Ms. Kodeli, Mr. Shea, Excellencies Ambassadors, almost every day in the chronicles we are informed of loss of light, among others, even because of blood feud. We need to accept and recognize that blood feud is one of those past phenomenon which impede and obstacle the progress of our society. Blood feuds and transferring blood feuds through the generations are an obstacle that do not only keep the people in fear, but also keep the minds of those that lives under this idea of blood feud behind. Blood feud is a challenge of the 21st century Albania, an Albania that wants to develop, to modernize, and to make progress in contradiction with its tribal past and anarchical past, which impedes this historical process. Of course, a blood feud needs to be addressed as a very concerning phenomenon for our society, because it hampers and threatens the right to life of a person, which is one of life, of course, is an attribute of a human being, and when this life is taken in any way, people is again eliminated as a bearer of rights and obligations. The right to life is protected by all national and international acts, so we do not need to cite them all here, but it remains, the blood feud remains a concerning phenomenon in Albania, but also in EU countries, because of the increasing number of Albanian asylum seekers who claim that their life is at danger in Albania because of this phenomenon. Different reports regarding asylum seekers show that one of the main factors in asylum seeking requests are claims of blood feud in Albania. Whether true or not these claims may be, this is a case-by-case adjudication issue of the competent bodies, but of course this claim is sustained, and for this even the progress reports of the EU for Albania have addressed the issue. Because of blood feud, there have been some consequences, some that have brought regress in Albania, and we can mention here the people being closed into a home, and of course these persons do not have the freedom to move freely, to educate, to benefit healthcare, to vote, to gather, to religion, and so on. It may seem from the reports that in some areas of the country the state is unfortunately facing a situation where it cannot guarantee its citizens safety and security, and for this reason persons are self-imprisoned, let's say, or leave the country to ensure their lives in other countries. The police has not had accurate statistics on the persons murdered because of blood feud and of the families that are involved in this. There is no investments to do away with this self-imprisonment, let's say. And the children are in miserable economic situations, and they have a feeling of blood feud that they are educated with, and they do not have proper education. Of course, some measures have been taken for additions and changes to the criminal code, and this shows the willingness of the Albanian Parliament to express and to say that this phenomenon will not be accepted and that it will be punished. The ombudsman institutions believes that the blood feud phenomenon, along with all other challenges faced by the Albanian society, requires a new approach. It requires continuous improvement of the legislation. It requires professional and speedy measures by the police, prosecution, and courts for the discovery, capture, and punishment of criminals that murder, that threaten, or that incite blood feuds. It requires full engagement of health, social, and education institutions to help people that are in this situation. In the meantime, we appreciate the Albanian Parliament as the legislative in the country. It can impact directly and visibly through the new structures in the prevention of blood feud and in the eradication of the other phenomenon that is related to blood feud, which is the impunity of people that commit these criminal acts. The participations of the highest levels of the parliament here shows the interest and the appreciation of this body towards this issue. This has also been why the reasons that the Ombudsman decided to submit 2 special reports to Parliament on the blood food phenomenon, of which one has been reviewed by the Subcommittee on Human Rights and has also requested the Parliament to pass a resolution. The reports were based on the experience of the Ombudsman institution and the data submitted by a number of state institutions and different institutions of the civil society. This report gives a historical overview of the phenomenon, of the reasons, of the work that our forefathers have done, especially Renaissance men, and some of the reasons why this phenomenon has reignited in the country. The report also addresses cases administered and managed by the Ombudsperson's office where a number of grievances have been filed regarding blood feud throughout the years. What we have noted is that the claimants request the protection of their life from the state, mediation for them to be able to travel abroad, because economic assistance to live, and so on. In the meantime, we also need to thank and appreciate the exceptional contribution of the Operazione Colomba who have raised awareness of Albanian authorities and the society on this phenomenon by organizing events in Shkodra, in Tropoja, in Tirana, and in Vlora. They are making concrete support. They are giving concrete support for families involved in blood feuds. In the discussions that we've had with them, I have said that the more the society moves forward, the more these children understand that their life cannot be left to blood feuds, the better it will be to eradicate this phenomenon. And only when society is open and the Albanian society is globalized and it is included in a new way of life that we aspire in the framework of Albania in the European Union, we hope that this phenomenon will be eradicated. I truly appreciate their work as volunteers who take out of their time to support and help people that are truly lost. And what it really impresses me in this regard, these people are a prey of revenge mentality, and this is very difficult. And the work of this association needs to be appreciated. We should all do as much as we can to come to their aid with institutional reform, with institutional support, with raising attention and getting the attention of all of the stakeholders that need to be involved in this framework, the police, the prosecution, the courts, to make possible that support is provided to these people as soon as possible. With the hope and belief that our engagement and commitment will help Albania to free itself of the blood feud shackles, I would like to wish you success in this event. Thank you very much for your attention. Shumë shkurtimisht, I will very shortly. I will introduce the activity of the Papa Giovanni XXIII association, because this gives you an idea of the Colomba operation here in Albania, and I will also talk about the work that we do with the families that are in blood feud and that are involved in vendettas as well, and all the activities that we have worked on. We were established in 1968 in Italy, and established by a Catholic priest, and of course the mission went beyond just our religion, but also extended to different religions in our work. We are present in 45 countries in Europe. In Albania, we have been in Albania since 1999, and in the context of this great phenomenon that has engulfed Albania and also with the movement of Kosovo refugees to Albania and the experience of the volunteers that worked in that regard, they stayed here and we worked further. And the reason why our community was established was for these family homes. The first president of the association said that one of the objectives is to provide a household and a home for those who do not have it. And we had, of course, activities with disabled persons, with persons with disabilities, and the persons in prisons. So wherever persons are marginalized or vulnerable, our mission and our objective is to be present with these people in order as directly as possible. We often in our activities we do not only render a service and provide a service, but all of the members of the association live with these families on a 24-hour, 7 days a week basis. So in Albania, we have two family homes, usually managed by a couple, a home for domestic violence victims, women domestic violence victims. So we opened it in Shkodra beginning of this year. We also have a unit in Albania for the rehabilitation of persons with drug addiction and alcohol addiction. We are in the Zadrima region, in a small village called Nashat, and a community here in Tirana, which works with marginalized adults, usually homeless persons or with different other issues. And lastly, but not least, the work with a special home in the Shkodra territory, in the Shkodra region, with the Operazione Colomba volunteers. I said all of this because it is important to give you a context in the beginning, and because the volunteers of the Operazione Colomba and following the mission of our community became very close to the families that work that live with the Blackfoot, with the methodology of association, basically. So we're not working in a beautiful room and we project interventions, but we go into the field and we visit almost daily all the families and the entire work, but also the colleagues will mention this, and all the work that has gathered the data has been done with outside sources, but also from direct knowledge and acquaintance. I want to close with my intervention here and also giving a message. What does the Papa Giovanni community wants to do, and this is also the alliance with Albania is consolidated. We've been here for 20 years. We want to continue to be here. We also have Albanian participants and volunteers. What I wanted to say before is that taking consideration the last manifestation and protest on March 8th for the Women's International Day, one of the protests was to remember the women that were the domestic violence victims. And one of the slogans, one of the mottos was not a woman less, or I will bring this slogan here as well to tell you that it's not just a slogan, but it should be a commitment for all of us. And I want to say this, that no more Albanians should die because of Blackfoot. So we hope that there is no less Albanian people because of this reason. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tommaso De Nicola. I am a volunteer. I have been here for some time with Colomba Operation since October 2008 and 16. With my colleagues Nadia and Kadrovi, we'll be here in Albania, specifically in Shkodra, for about a year. Before we start, I actually wanted to talk about a little bit what Marcello said, and I'd like to congratulate you all for all of the representatives here, the Speaker of Parliament and the Italian Embassy for the support that we have been given to organize this event, and especially Ms. Irina Balanza, Ombudsperson. Her presence here today it marks the continuous commitment of this very important institution in the fight against the blood feud phenomenon. And I will very shortly speak about our activity as Colomba in Albania, and then I'll give the floor to the presenters of the project, Dr. Banza and Sejanovic, for detailed discussion of the report. The Colomba operation and the work of the Papa Giovanni XXIII Association and Community is a non-violence Peace Corps organization made up of civilians. Then we intervene as third parties, as unarmed persons. So we intervene in the conflict along with the civilian organization, civilian citizens to support them. Civilians are those who we support, and that also are impacted by the biggest consequences of conflict. And our activity is that we go in these conflicts to be close to them, to support civilians and the populations involved in conflict, to protect their rights, and to be able and to try to rebuild confidence between the parties and trust between the parties. Because we know that when there is violence, trust among people is lost. And then rebuilding these relations during the reconciliation process. And in the work that we do, we work with all sides, addressing all issues civilians have, because those who have been victims of violence, we want to work with in order for them to trust each other again and then go back to peaceful living among each other. The Colomba Operazione activity started in 1992 in the context of the association against violence in Yugoslavia, in former Yugoslavia, marking the need for unarmed groups in conflict areas. And then we moved throughout the world, from Africa to Uganda to Chiapas in Mexico, to East Timor in Asia, always focusing towards the Balkans as well. And since 2010, we have a fixed center, a permanent center in Shkodra, and also we have a monthly presence in Tropoja. Currently, Colomba is also present in Palestine and Israel, in Colombia, in the peace for peace community in Colombia, and also in Lebanon, in the refugee camps at the border with Syria, where the conflict has been continuous since 2011. In Albania, the Colomba volunteers have the objective, the main objective, to fight against vendetta and blood feud, and to overcome this phenomenon. And we have organized our work in three main groups in the field. First of all, we focus on the families that are involved in these phenomena. As Marcello noted, we visit them daily. We have a clear relation with this family. The second stakeholder is the Albanian civil society. In general, it is the Shkodra civil society with its awareness-raising activities. And last but not least, we work with local, national Albanian institutions and international institutions as well. In short, the activities that we undertake with these stakeholders And for example, with families, as we noted, we have continuous visits to share and to hear what they need to say. We discuss on different topics to give them a sense of reality and daily calm, and for them to be able to approach what happens outside their home. Sometimes discussions are mostly focused on their living conditions, possibility of reconciliation, possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation. We as Colomba try to have a clear relation with all parties in the conflicts, and in the context of blood feud here in Albania, this is very important, because our work is related to knowing the pain of both sides in the conflict. Of course, those who are afraid that they will be a target for blood feud should not be left alone, should not be not considered. But also on the other side, the family that is pressured to take blood should not be forgotten, because they also live with pain in their day because they've lost somebody, a loved one. And this initiated the conflict. And further on one side, the social isolation they undergo, and on the other side, the negative pressure of the blood they need to take are also relevant. Sometimes we say that we don't know for whom it's more difficult, because even the person who needs to take blood has a great burden on their shoulders, and we work with these people too. And the other activities with families is that we accompany them to guarantee them a movement, to keep them safe during their daily life, in order for them not to be subject to blood feud, but also to have access to social assistance, social help, and healthcare. As the ambassador noted, families often live in a social isolation context and outside of the attention of institutions, and we're trying to be a bridge between civilization, these civilians and institutions. The work with civil society and awareness raising in society is done through campaigns, monthly campaigns that we try to organize every month. We have organized a few in Shkodra, and also here in Tirana, in Baramtsuri, and in Tropoja. And another activity on which we focus is also our presence and our involvement as in testimonies and with people that have been subjected to this type of violence, or reconciliation that they have found, or the lack of persons that have forgiven and have been forgiven. And we do this either in public events or by bringing these people to visit homes that are currently in blood feud, because their words are heavy and they're more relevant than the words of somebody else who has not ever been involved in such a conflict, or just a normal volunteer. In closing, with the work that we do with the institutions, of course, during the last few years, has been in the framework of national campaigns, and I can remind you here of the 2013 campaigns, where we collected signatures for Life Against Blood Feud, and more than 500 Albanians signed our petition to put an end to this type of support. In 2014, we had the March for Peace from Baramtsuri all the way to Tirana. In 2016, on the occasion of the on the local elections, we disseminated the questionnaires in order to get a better perception on how people perceive this issue and what these officials will do to overcome this phenomenon. And also, in 2016, we organized events in the Tirana and Shkodra, public events in Tirana and Shkodra, where we were able to organize and realize two monuments, and a lot of people participated in these monuments, and you can see these ideas in Shkodra. It is work by our volunteer in Shkodra. I will close my remarks by saying that I'm very happy to see so many participants here with us today, to see so many institutions present in the room. And the work of the Colomba operation is not only a bridge between civilians and citizens and the state, but also bridges an institutional gap. And that's why we say that work with institutions is very important. It's fundamental to overcome the problem of blood feud. And Albanian and international institutions are those who can change the living conditions of these persons, of these families, and to improve their livelihood and to create true peace and sustainable peace for them. Having said this, I'd like to give the floor to the following presenters of the Operazione Colomba, and thank you for your participation and attention. Good morning, everyone. My name is Giulia Giordani-Panza, and I'm coordinator of the activities with Cernovich, and we were volunteers for quite a long time for the Operazione Colomba. For the 23rd, for the Papa Giovanni 23rd in association in Shkodra and Tropoe, and we were able to get contact with all the households that Tommaso talked about, families that live with a vendetta and blood feud, unfortunately. And I would like to thank the persons present here with us today, and especially those who allowed us to be able to continue our awareness-raising work and disseminating a culture based on human rights and peace. I will go into the description of the report. Which has been published in 2 languages, in Albanian and English. And you also have a version in your seats. I'd like to wish you all that you all, I'd like to call on you to all read, because it is a reflection on a very important phenomenon, and it's very difficult to describe it in detail, because it is a fruit of a changing society like Albania. We soon will publish online, not only in Albanian, in English, but also in Italian on our web channels. And we'll go into details of the report. We have published also previous reports. This is the 3rd edition, because in 2013, 2016, so every 3 years, we have published our work, collecting all of the relevant data that we try to gather and analyze from our work as Operazione Colomba, and then to disseminate after having processed it. In this 3rd edition, the objective was to continue the awareness-raising work of the civil society, but at the same time to dwell deeper on some contexts and new statistics of blood feud and vendetta. And at the same time, this serves us to continue our information of the community and to have visibility in the constructive sense, and to say to everyone that this is a problem that is not only related to the people that are involved in blood feuds or in vendetta, but the entire society. So this will be a way to continue towards cooperation with institutions, and we will be work to find strategies to eradicate this problem. We also promote the methodology of the intervention that we undertake in our work. We have a point of view, a perspective of the persons that we work with as volunteers, as whether Albanian or Italian, and we have a perspective from which a good practice has been born. And in the report, we stress our activities and methodology that can be used by everybody, because this is best practice to be used by everyone. At the same time, we give out the entire activity that we do as Operazione Colomba, and we also provide some relevant data to Albanian institutions to maybe even foresee or overcome the phenomenon itself. The format of the report is approachable by everyone. It can be read by experts and also by the general audience. So it is adequate for experts and the entire population who live outside of this context. And for this reason, there's a possibility to read this report not only in Albania but also outside Albania internationally. The report is in a few sections. In the first section, we have the cause and the context of the blood feud. Then we have a second section which deals with the reasons and the context and the consequences. We do not describe in detail this part, but I need to stress only a few relevant aspects of the report that could give you and shed some light on what we know in general as a phenomenon. First of all, the report stresses the fact that of the non-continuity of the phenomenon after the fall of communism. We have heard often about from civil society or the media or even the households and the families, etc. We hear about the canon and the principles of the canon for the universe, about the universe of the canon. What we see today is a completely new phenomenon, and it is rooted in the context after the fall of communism, a difficult context, a transitional context. So where the state still had difficulty in its development. In this context of difficulties and social issues present in the country until 1997, a part of the population and a few of the families tried to respond to their needs for justice with self-justice every time they believed that they felt that their rights were violated. And they did this because the state was not able to deliver justice. And this moment has somewhat given rise to a mentality of private justice, of personal justice. And this has been, and the value of the canon has been instrumentalized, but the canon is not this. And the blood feud today is very little connected with the original canon. So there is a separation of the past with the present, and we can say that we have a new phenomenon, because if the canon of the medieval ages when it had a very special social role and it focused on peace, today it is being used practically in an abusive and arbitrary manner and a degenerated manner because it no longer has a basis for this canon, and this canon is very far from the original medieval practices of whether vendetta or even forgiveness, even the instrument of forgiveness, because the canon itself also resolved dispute, and it is applied today arbitrarily on a case-by-case basis according to the desires or wishes of a family or of a person. In this respect, the vision that we have on the phenomenon is quite wide. We contextualize the current phenomenon, and we need to stress that on one side, if in its origins the canon was developed at a time when there was no state, and this served as the state, and it was very important at that time when the state was still not developed. The phenomenon is completely different, and they're not the same as in the medieval times, and the report sheds light on these aspects. On the other hand, our vision as Operazione Colomba is wide. The phenomenon is described not only from the problem from the point of view of self-imprisonment or the rights that are deprived, which is the right to life. So the problem is taking a life of someone, and a consequence is also the self-imprisonment, and that's why we need to work against the elimination of somebody else's life. So the approaches that take us towards murder and to deprivation of life. In this framework, as Tommaso said, the activity of the Colomba operation during these years was not only working with the families of one side or the other, but we have tried to work with the persons that needs to implement blood feud, because they also have the burden of pain, of loss, and of course some many times hate. And what we try to do as Colomba operation is to favor and to help these families and to support them and to fight against hate, and to think about a future outside of the context of this blood feud, and to kind of free these people from their hate. And this does not mean just to help them progress in their life and to steer away from this project of death, but it also means to help their families who are afraid of being subjected to blood feud to step outside of this fear, because both families will be freed in this context. And in this aspect, we with examples have described that we have noted even cases from newspapers, and not only our personal examples, and we have given the main causes of the conflicts of these blood feuds. And this relays the dynamics of these problems of these cases. On the one side, we have identified the emotions and how people sometimes are not able to overcome the suffering and the pain for an injustice and for a death in the family. And on the other hand, we have also considered the negative pressure of the society. A few days ago, we were visiting a lady in her home, and she said that every day I am told that the blood cannot be forgiven, and this does not help me because I lose hope. And me and my family, she said, we don't know when we can be free. This is the negative social pressure. So we need to change this social pressure, and this should be a commitment of us all. And for this reason, we want to share our experience with society and Albanian institutions. And to speak positive words to these people means to transform the social pressure from negative to positive. Currently, the phenomenon is evolving, as I noted, and it is related to an existing mentality. Not only in Albania, but also in a few European countries. So it has a wider European dimension. And for this reason, I'd like to give the floor to Saranovic, who will go into the details of the statistics where this phenomenon is prevalent and the work that we have done with the institutions. Thank you. I will continue by giving a few data taken from our report as regards geographical dispersion. We need to stress that the majority of blood feuds is in the villages and the suburbs of the northern region. From 2013, the Colomba has statistically gathered data on vendetta and blood feuds, and with stress on 2013, where we have information collected mainly from the media. Every day, the volunteers of the association basically do a press review to analyze the cases where it is clear, and they clearly refer to vendettas and blood feuds, which could also become an even larger conflict. Our database has updated information from December 2017 until 2017. We have 550 total cases with cases of vendettas and blood feuds. These cases are not during the 2011-2017 period, but they could have originated before that. 48 blood feud cases and 270 vendetta cases. Other cases are being continuously monitored in order for them not to be to escalate into conflict. If we consider the period when this report was updated from 2015 to December 2017, so last 3 years, we have noted 141 new vendetta cases and 15 new blood feud cases. So there is a constant comparison with the 3 previous years, especially as regards vendetta, with a slight increase. As regards the originating causes, we have noted 3 of them mainly. The property case issues, previous conflicts, and honor conflicts. Of course, they can also consider tradition as regards geographical dispersion of the phenomenon. Tirana takes the first place with 86 cases, then Shkodra with 46, Leja 12, and so on and so forth, decreasing in the smaller towns and cities. We have also helped and assisted with the export of blood feuds, and we've studied that they move, people move geographically, and they take their blood feuds with them as well. We also had cases outside of the borders. The most impacted country is Italy with 11 cases, Greece 4, France and the Netherlands with 2, and Belgium with 2. and Sweden and UK with 1. The age group is 27 to 4 to some 60. As Julia said, there's two characteristics. It is transversal, that it does not include only the Albanian territory, but also territories outside of the country. And it has victims of a wide range of age groups, which takes back the medieval tradition, the Kanun or Educagine, and always evolves. As regards data gathering and processing, we have elected and selected to process the data that we collected from the media, because we compared the data with different sources and different data, and we can note and say that the data that we have vary widely depending on the sources they've been gathered from. We have 3 types of data from Albanian institutions, from the national or international associations. All of them have been relayed in the report you have in your hands. And there's a lot of lack of clarity between the dates, and also based on the analysis that have been provided for the data. And also from the point of view of interpretation of the phenomena based on requirements and criteria for interpretation. I would like to remind you that we deal with both sides of the conflict, while data analyze only the victimized party, let's say, or the party that is currently self-imprisoned. As regards the origin of the subjects that we work with, our data is unfortunately limited only to an area in the country, because we do not have human resources to cover the entire country. And that's why our work is focused on Shkodra, in Tropoja. Sometimes we come to Tirana also to visit a number of families. As regards the families that we follow directly, we're following 31 families right now, with a total 200 persons. On page 22 you will find the specifics and the disaggregation according to towns. The origins of these groups and these families is mainly from the northern Albania region. In Tropoja we visit 7 families directly, in Shkodra 16 families, in Koplik 2, in Mamuras 2, in Tirana and in Durrës 2 respectively. There's 11 families which have still not decided whether they want to pursue the vendetta, and there's 16 which are subjected to this vendetta. As regards the origins, many of them are from rural areas on the outskirts of towns, and they come from mainly the Dukajin or Tropoja areas and regions. And they have often dislocated to escape this phenomenon. As regards the report that the report that we have developed, and the pressure of international institutions regarding this phenomenon, since 2012 we have noted an improvement. International institutions that have been mostly involved are the European Union, which we would like to thank again. And in the 2012 progress report on monitoring integration of Albania in the European Union, they included data on blood feud and vendetta, and the idea was to create a database and a recommendations document, as also foreseen by the legislation on blood feud. Regarding in the previous reports for 2014, 2015, 2016, the Commission also required the attention of the Albanian institutions to eradicate the phenomenon and made this call in the chapter on human rights protection. Of course, the recommendations is to strengthen Albanian institutions and in regard to the introduction of educational programs and regarding the change of the society. Of course, other institutions such as the United Nations has made their recommendations for Albanian institutions for the eradication of this phenomenon. As regards Albanian institutions, of whom we have many representatives here, I'm very happy to have you here. They dealt with the blood feud phenomenon only from a criminal point of view and a legal point of view, mainly with the changes to the 2013 Criminal Code, which according to Article 78 and 83 impose punishments, harsher punishments for these murders. In Shkodra, there has been special attention paid to families that are in blood feuds and self-confined families. I would like to note, as Ms. Balansa, the ombudsperson, said, the changes to the legislation from the Albanian Parliament, which recognizes the phenomenon and condemns the lack of legislation and makes a call for Albanian institution cooperation, such as the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Social Protection, cooperated in this regard with the ombudsperson office. And there's also been good cooperation with the ombudsperson. I'd like to mention here the two reports that this institution published with the cooperation of all Albanian institutions and also the involvement of the civil society. A few parallel forms of cooperation have started. In March to September 2017, we had meetings with civil society services, prosecution, civil society, and of course the Colomba operation was also involved. But I need to say that there was no continuation after these meetings. We are ready to restart and to do whatever is necessary with civil society and institutions. Another initiative of the Albanian institutions was do not hit but love against the proliferation of weapons, and this call could also be very important and relevant in obstacling this blood feud phenomenon. Maybe all the expectations were not there, but it was a very relevant initiative to control the dissemination and carrying of arms. What the Colomba operation would like to note and stress is that right now institutions did not focus specifically on protecting victims of a blood feud, which means that when a family does not get its justice, they do not feel vindicated, and that's why they take justice in their own hands. The investigations of the police have not always given the adequate results. I'd like to mention here a case for about the murder of a girl and her grandfather, who is still not resolved as a case, and it's very important because the investigation was closed without resolving and solving the case. And in this case, it's very important for international and Albanian institutions to cooperate with the civil society to deliver justice. The Colomba operation is always open for any cooperation with all institutions, and we hope that after this meeting we have other meetings, not only in the Shkodra district, but also in other locations. As regards the recommendations of our report, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague. Thank you very much for your attention. I will go into some important recommendations of the report. At the end of the report, you'll find a series of recommendations on what could be the elements that can be implemented regarding the strategies for the eradication of the blood flu phenomenon. And of course, the reasons and the causes for blood feud. I will mention a few of them, what I believe are the most important and most interesting. On the one hand, we have the establishment of bodies and law enforcement bodies, and then reconciliation through justice that they can bring in cooperation with Albanian tradition, which is also part of the Albanian constitution. So we believe that these elements are very important and should be renewed and stressed once more in the current Albanian context. We believe that it could be very best practice to eradicate the blood flu phenomenon. We have law 9389 of 2005, which has not been implemented as of yet. And it should have established the coordinating council on the fight against the blood feud. Many years have gone by, so this law could be reviewed and be implemented in the framework of the current context. Take into consideration different aspects which could be efficient in the implementation of these strategies. Then we have the systematic introduction of educational control programs which speak about human rights and the protection of human rights in a non-violent management of disputes context. And last one, in support of what my colleague said, the establishment of a compensation fund and support fund for families that have been involved in the phenomenon. Of course, there's two more paragraphs which are related to mediation and counseling that the Colomba operation undertakes, because we also do this mediation, considering the positive aspects of tradition, but also adapting those to the emergent needs of human rights that families have. And the last aspect is to propose a reconciliation process that could favor the eradication of the phenomenon in general, by combining self-justice aspects with state justice aspects. The causes of the phenomenon have shown that the presence of the state and the change of mentality, such as the protection of human rights, have shown that this phenomenon can be overcome and eradicated. But the trust of civil society and the families that we work with should be enhanced. And as Tommaso said, we are a bridge between these households, these families and institutions. To bring these parties together, we want to continue, of course, the cooperation with all of the institutions that work with us and continue to work with us. We want to continue and to have an Albania without vendetta and without blood feud, and we want to bring hope for peace and for the families that live every day with this drama. And let's come up with some efficient strategies together to eradicate this phenomenon. I would like to mention here also the phrase of Martin Luther King, who said that time is now. That's why time is now to go forward together and to think that it is not impossible to solve this problem, because we can make it possible. I'd like to thank all the participants for your participation here, especially we would like to thank the Italian embassy and the ambassador, also the Speaker of Parliament and General Secretary, Dr. Raffaele Gamanati, who has supported us and has provided us with the possibility to be visible by supporting our work. A special thanks to them, because this opportunity is quite relevant for us. I would like to thank the Ombudsperson institution with which we have worked for many years and will continue to work, and I would like to thank also the European Union for the support and for welcoming us to this structure. We would like again to thank all the participants, and especially the Peace Corps representatives, the Diplomatic Corps representatives, I'm sorry, the Speaker of the Albanian Parliament, and other representatives from other institutions here today. We hope. We also like to thank the Trento province, which, thanks to the support and cooperation, allowed us to make forward in our work. I would like to open the floor to the discussion and to the questions, and wish you good work. The report of everybody, and I can say that there are a lot of things on which we need to reflect before we open the debate, because I imagine that there will be possibilities for everybody to request more information and to make remarks. First of all, I also forgot, and I'd like to stress here that we need to thank the European delegation not only for welcoming us here today, as Sarah mentioned, but the European Commission has continuously stressed this phenomenon, this problem, and has made it an issue and has brought it to the attention of the Albanian government, and this is continuous work that the European Commission does. I wanted to say also, maybe we do not have here present representatives from the Shqiptare region, because they are represented in the report in Shqiptare a few days ago, and we are here in Tirana, and of course the figures that we have aggregated and disaggregated, and for me it was a surprise to see that we have a phenomenon in Tirana, and for me this was a surprise, because this is a phenomenon that I personally thought was geographically limited to the north, but we understand that it's not just present in the country, but there's also presence of it and prevalence of it outside of the country. And so these are some points of reflection, and I believe that the proposals that were made here need to be reviewed and taken into consideration, because it's clear that this phenomenon should not only be studied but should be eradicated. And as we said, we should all contribute together to have a concrete alliance and better alliance of what we have to date in order to overcome this phenomenon. Thank you again. I would say that those who would like to ask questions, not only there's a microphone in the room, but you can also use the mic at the podium as well. Madam Colletti will open the discussion. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, participating here. First of all, I would like to thank of course, the organizers, but also the participation here of the Speaker of Parliament. His presence here shows that the Albanian Parliament and Albanian parliamentarians are paying close attention and special attention to this phenomenon that we are fully aware of. If I say me, of course, I'm speaking about myself, and I have been in different constituencies, and I've been elected in different constituencies. So I've represented Albanians from different territories, and even though I was born and raised in Tirana, I have also represented the north, and I've visited these families more than once. This is the first thing. The second thing that I would say, there are no representatives from Shqiptare here, but I also am a pure Shqiptare person as well, and I can. My origin is from there. And the third thing that I would like to say is that I've heard, and it truly impressed me. And then I listened to Sarah with a lot of attention, and Julia as well. And we can start with what Julia said. The first impact that I got from her is that somebody in the Blackfield is from somebody from the north, and it is a compliment. Julia looks like somebody from the north, because it's clear that Albanian women are very beautiful. Please let me tell you this. From the accents, I understood that she's from the north as well, so I understand that. I'm not wrong, right? And from the north, we are very tough women, very strong women, and of course we need to be at the center of the discussion. Why do I say that the women? Because the women do not take a weapon and kill somebody and murder somebody, and this is one side of the discussion. They're not involved in blood feuds. And I did not hear this, and I did not perceive this in our discussion here. And the second thing, Dr. Julia said, I'm old right now, so I can call you by name, right? By first name basis. After the state stopped being there after the 90s, let me tell you, after the 90s, the state has always existed, even before that. And it's also had some results after the Second World War against this phenomenon. It's my perception, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that we need to see also the way. Maybe it was wrong, but the conclusions and the results were adequate. The vendetta at the time did not exist. After the Second World War, there's a lot of people from my generation. They know what I'm talking about. It did not exist. So we also need to see for a second why and what was done at the time. Of course, from a different point of view, different methods, a different world, of course, at different times, everything was different, but we need to see a little bit what was done from the dictatorship to eradicate this phenomenon. And at the time, of course, maybe the phenomenon was even more present right after the World War, because we're talking of a period where this phenomenon was quite evident. The second thing I would say is that during these years, we representatives of the politics have failed completely, and full stop there. So we need to be more careful. Rinda said rightfully, we need to have specific laws. Even though the phenomenon itself, as I understand, and I was very surprised, it's not a phenomenon only of the North. It's not only a phenomenon that is part only of the Catholic and Christian world. And this is a phenomenon that is exported quite easily throughout Albania if people have the right of migration, of course. So this is a wide-ranging discourse with a lot of stakeholders and factors, but I believe that politics needs to should do its lion's share of the work. I need to honestly thank all of the young people here that come to Albania, and they go everywhere else, of course, to, whether they're volunteers or not, to do something which is not easy, quite the contrary. So take my head off to all of you. I believe that religion is something that keeps these volunteers going strong. So, but I also believe that the will to do things that is proud of is also a strong point. Maybe we need to sit down and discuss this in more detail, at more length, and more often. But my last thanks, and I'll close with this, I'll stop here. My last thanks goes to all of the teachers, the lady teachers, that risk their lives to teach the boys and the girls that are self-confined in all those almost fortresses, and the ombudsman should have said this more, because you do this. You shouldn't thank anybody. We need to thank you for this. But I think Rinda should have said this as well. The teachers, the women teachers, and it is a program that was generated and developed by the Education Ministry to at least open, let's say, or provide, let's say, a light at the end of the tunnel. And unfortunately, it truly is a tunnel. So I wholeheartedly would like to thank, and even though sometimes our conferences are very much shorter, it's normal to stay here so long, but it was truly worth it. Thank you very much also to the embassy for inviting us. And thank you for everything you do. Faleminderit shumë. Ka ndonjë tjetër që dëshiron të marr fjalën? That would like to speak, I'm sorry. If not, I would also like to thank particularly Minister Kodeli and Speaker Rucci for being here with us, and all of you for being here with us. I believe that this is a testimony that this is serious and positive and real interest to fight this phenomenon. So I'd like to thank you again for your work every day, and for this lucid presentation, which will put us in a condition to say that we didn't know anything. Thank you again, and have a good day.